So in the beginning part about introductions, feel free to just share your name and, if you're a student here, what your major is, what year, and where you went on your cross-cultural trip. And let's see. Then Mark, you want to pick up the question about why they chose the destination that they did? Okay, yeah. Morning, Kimberly. So one of the good things is that, I think I mentioned it, but hopefully this will be a resource that students can use on into the future and be a help. Sometimes I wonder how students get through all the different Zoom sessions. I know probably the same for you, Mark, and others, but the conferences that we usually go to, they're all Zoom or online, and it's like not quite the same, but I'm thankful we have technology. So Paul, are you going to be locating here in Spring Arbor?
In Jackson, just off of Springport Road.
Oh, fantastic. Yeah. Yep. Well, I'm so thrilled. Yeah, we've missed you around here. It's been how many years?
We've been here 9.5 years almost.
Oh, wow.
We're excited to be back, except for the current state of affairs and coronavirus and
yeah,
and things like that. But otherwise, we're excited to be back.
Right.
Paul, when you get settled, send a message so we can get a little group together and go out and solve the world's problems.
Yes.
I'm up for that.
Indeed. So if you are just joining, you found us. We're grateful that you're here. We'll start in just a couple of minutes. Rob, it's nice to see you. Thanks for dropping by.
Yeah, thanks for inviting me.
And if you are a student of Dr. Edwards or mine, here for the pure joy of learning or possibly extra credit, thank you.
I'm sure they're motivated by the joy of learning.
Of course, yes, indeed.
Especially Nathan Trax.
Especially Nathan.
Well, he's one of my students too.
Excellent.
And Hannah, she doesn't need the credit, and she's still coming. Listen along. Hey, Paul, how are you?
I'm doing well. How about yourself?
Good, doing well, thank you. Yeah.
Staying safe, I hope. And
yeah.
Good.
And down below from you, from my view, is for that Steve Boris.
Yeah.
Are you one of the speakers?
Yeah, good to see you, Dr. Chan.
Good morning.
Steve, did you study business at Spring Arbor?
I was actually communications.
Oh, okay.
Was my focus, but at that time there was a lot of crossover. I know there still probably is, but
yes,
there was a lot of crossover there. But worked closely with Dr. Chan on my honors research project.
Oh,
and
wow.
So that we actually co-authored a journal article between him and myself and Dr. Woods at the
That's
time.
Cool.
So that goes way back to 2005, I think.
Mm-hmm.
You know, when dinosaurs freely roamed the campus,
exactly.
and the DC was just a rack of spears that you just had to go out and catch something. You know,
yes.
that's pretty much what it was.
I fondly remember those days.
Yeah.
And Steve is one of our major recruiters too.
Oh, I have heard.
Auto owners. So
yes. You are quite legendary, Steve.
Work there.
Yeah. And I see Bethany. Maybe we'll wait to about 10:06 and got some more folks coming.
Tom, looks like you're recording the session too, right?
Yes. Yep,
That's great.
sure am. So let's see. Gwen, how are you doing?
Gwen,
I
you're
can't-
muted.
I can't hear you, but I love your smile.
So sorry.
That's okay.
I'm doing well. I'm figuring out how to do this faculty stuff.
Yes. Well, I'm so glad you're here. And I imagine you're busy these days. You're teaching communications courses and
Yes.
yes, awesome. Well, those of us that took the training online really appreciate how you
Oh.
designed that. It's so helpful.
Thank you. Thank you.
All right. Well, welcome everybody. And thank you for being here on a Friday morning. So this is a CPLA gathering to talk about issues related to the liberal arts at Spring Arbor University. My name is Tom Holsinger-Friesen. Mark and I serve on the cross-cultural, we serve on the CPLA committee. And we're here with the Director of Cross-Cultural Studies, Diane, as well as some students, alumni, and other faculty to talk about the cross-cultural experience at Spring Arbor. So I'd like to just introduce some folks. We've got as students, we've got Meredith Harkema, Nathan Trexler, Andrew Phelps. As alumni, Steve Bohus at Auto Owners Insurance in Lansing, Hannah Gilliam, recently graduated and working at Spring Arbor. And then in terms of faculty staff, like I mentioned, Diane Kurtz, Director of Cross-Cultural Studies here, Professor Paul Nemechek, who's joining us from Guatemala right now, and Professor in Sociology as well as Cross-Cultural Studies, Dr. Mark Edwards, Professor of History as well as Cross-Cultural Studies, and also me, I'm Director of CPLA, but teach in theology and love the cross-cultural program. We're working on a trip to Israel in 2022, but lots of great things going on, despite the fact that we've got COVID and other challenges. Today will be a day for you all to learn a bit about our program and some of the experiences. So maybe starting with the students, Meredith, Nathan, and Andrew, would you just introduce yourself, maybe what you're studying here, what year, and if you got another fun fact, that's fine too. So Meredith?
My name is Meredith Harkema. I am a senior and I'm a biology health careers major, and I'm also on the golf team.
All right, thank you, Meredith. Nathan?
Yep, my name is Nathan Traxler. I'm a senior finance major this year, and for my cross-cultural trip back in the fall of 2019, I went to Tokyo, Japan for a semester.
Awesome, thank you. Andrew?
Good morning. My name is Andrew. I am a biohealth careers major as well. I'm a senior this year, and I actually work at the cross-cultural office.
Excellent, thank you. How about Steve and then Hannah?
Good morning, everyone. My name is Steve Bohus. I am actually a 2004 alum from SAU, where I studied communications with my emphasis in advertising, public relations, and a minor in broadcasting. And while I was there, did about everything that really took advantage of my Spring Arbor experience and was involved in a whole lot of things. My current role, I am a team lead I lead a recruiting team at Auto Owners. I'm the lead recruiter there, and have been in the HR workspace for about 7 years, but have been with Auto Owners over 16 years, actually, where I started just 2 days after walking for graduation on a Saturday, started Monday morning, and have been there ever since. So happy to be here and to chat about the cross-culture experience and using it kind of from the employer perspective.
Fantastic. Thank you.
My name is Hannah Gilliam. I am a 2020 alum, so I just graduated, and then I came right back. I am working in the alumni office. I'm the alumni and student relations coordinator. I graduated with a major in business and a minor in French. So I actually did a semester abroad in France, and then I also did a cross-cultural 3-week trip with Paul to Guatemala.
C'est bon.
C'est bon.
That's about all I got. Diane, would you bring a word of greeting, and then Paul and then Mark?
Happy to. Welcome everyone to this wonderful Community of Learners panel discussion on the value of cross-cultural studies. A little bit about me. I've worked in cross-cultural at Spring Arbor since 1991, and Paul precedes me in cross-cultural studies here, which started in 1986 as a requirement. We're happy you're here, and we look forward to taking you on cross-cultural studies.
I'm Paul Nemechek. I started at Spring Arbor 41 years ago, turned 66 this year, and did my 66th cross-cultural trip. Most of them to Guatemala, but also to Belize, Costa Rica, Cuba, Jamaica, England, Scotland, Wales, the Czech Republic, and Austria.
Thank you. Mark.
Yeah, so let's jump in with kind of our first question. One of the most stressful things that students struggle with is, how do I choose a cross-cultural trip? So kind of a two-part question. How and why did you all choose where you went? And kind of a second part, a lot of advice sometimes students hear is, well, you should choose a trip. You should go someplace that you would probably never ever go before, never go in your lifetime. You should choose that. And as I hear that advice a lot, I'm not sure about it. I sometimes counsel the opposite for students. So I wonder if you can share kind of how the process was you went about choosing your trip, but you could also maybe weigh in. What do you think about that advice of going someplace you'd never go before? Or you would never go kind of in the future, that's kind of your one-time shot to be there. What do you think of that advice? So we'll start with the students.
So I did a semester abroad in Guatemala in the fall of 2019, so just a year ago. I chose that destination because I did already know some Spanish just from taking it in high school, and then trips to Mexico with my family just for spring break. And so I was comfortable with that, but it was still gonna be uncomfortable enough to push me to grow. And I also knew students in the past who had gone there to do medical internships, and that's something that really intrigued me. So that's why I chose it. I kind of like the advice to go somewhere where you wouldn't go on vacation, or just go on your own kind of a thing, because I think it would help push you out of your comfort zone. But I also think it should be something that you're comfortable with and intrigues you. So if going to Guatemala does not intrigue you and you wouldn't go there on your own, then I'm not going to say you wouldn't enjoy the trip. You still would enjoy the trip, but you might get something more out of it if it's somewhere that you really have a desire to go.
So maybe don't just think practically, but have a dream too, or I don't know if I'm summarizing that well.
Yeah, no, yeah, I like that.
Okay. Other students.
Yeah, I would completely agree with you on that, saying that you should go somewhere that you're a little bit uncomfortable with, but you still are comfortable going to. I think no matter where you end up going, your horizons as a person are going to be expanded tenfold compared to any student who wouldn't partake in a study abroad program, especially a semester abroad. In my circumstances, I was always interested in East Asia, and we just never had any 3-week or J-term or summer trips for any East Asian countries, and Tokyo, Japan was the only semester abroad that we had. So I decided, after a lot of flip-flopping back and forth, I would wake up one morning and feel horrible about it, and then I would later in the day feel really excited about it, and you just got to pull the trigger on something. And that the moment I sent in that application, I felt peace.
Yeah, I last January I had the opportunity to travel to Jamaica with Dr. Dave Hopper, and it was just a blast. And I'm not gonna lie, one of the reasons I chose it because it's January and cold here, and it's warm down there. It's definitely a factor when choosing a trip. I know for a lot of students, and that was definitely the case for me. But also just because it was a culture that I had never been able to experience before. I had opportunities to experience some European and some Central American culture, and the Caribbean, Bahama was just not something that I had been able to experience before. So that definitely influenced it as well. And as far as the advice to go somewhere where you may not get the opportunity always, I always think like financially, this is a great opportunity to go someplace that you may not always be able to afford to go or experience the experiences that these trips can offer you. So I do agree with it in the sense that when you're choosing a trip, maybe like I said, financially, it's just somewhere where you're going to get a whole lot more out of than just doing it by yourself.
Steve and Hannah, any thoughts on students as they choose a trip?
It was a different world when we chose our trips because it was not built into your overall Spring Arbor experience. It was extra they had to come up with. So that was a major barrier for me, being the oldest of three, and all my two younger siblings also attended Spring Arbor, and my dad was a minister, so, but not in the Free Methodist. So when it came to all of us being at Spring Arbor at the same time, when it came time to make that decision, the financial piece was a huge barrier to being able to go to some of the places that I really wanted to. I ended up doing, at that time they had a Chicago experience still, and so I did my J term working in Chicago. So kind of the opposite of what Andrew got in terms of winter in the Caribbean. I got to experience the inner city and the idea of either the train is going to come or I'm going to die. One of those things is going to happen in the next couple of minutes because I'm wearing all the things I brought with me and I'm still quite cold. But it certainly opened my eyes to what's happening behind the veil of, the shiny tourist side. And that really influenced a lot of, kind of where my life has gone since then. I was very driven I wanted to work in the ad world. I was going to make Super Bowl ads. This is what I really wanted to do. And at that time, that required life in New York, LA, or Chicago. And I was going to be okay with that until I went and actually spent my J term in Chicago and, worked with homeless kids in the morning and then did an internship down in the museum district. And, you go to Navy Pier, and my brain really could not understand how 16 blocks you go from poverty to just excess in the, like, not going to throw stones. It's not the point, but it created this awareness of something from someone in rural mid-Michigan. I just was not ever exposed to anything like that. And so in terms of being aware of and cognizant of and really motivated by social justice and generational poverty and things like that, it just really shaped my perspective on many, many things since then. So it definitely was a valuable experience for me, even though at the time I kind of felt bad going like, well, I'm just going to Chicago or just, but I do see now, years later, all the things that I did gain from that experience.
Yeah, thank you, Steve. It does, what you described reminds me in an Egypt trip, we had the students go to what's called Garbage City, where some of the poorest of the poor collect garbage, recycle it. We stepped off the bus and there was a giant dead rat right at the foot of the stairs, and I was kind of concerned, are the students going to freak out? They did fine. And it was actually obviously a heart-rending kind of experience. And that evening, we went to Zamalek Island in Cairo, which is where the more wealthy class live. We went to an opera kind of concert and dressed up and went to kind of and that was kind of intentional for us to experience the extremes. I do think that the model that Diane and Paul and others have left for us is the cross-cultural studies. We don't go there to be nice and comfortable. We're going to experience some jarring things, and that's part of the learning experience. Hannah, what about you? Why did you choose what you did? And, any thoughts and advice for students on destination?
Yeah, so just to reiterate, I did a semester abroad in France, and then I did a 3-week trip in Guatemala. So my semester abroad in France was life-changing for sure, but I chose that because I was a French minor. I'm absolutely in love with French culture and fascinated by French language and European culture in general. I did a lot of travel when I was over there. I think I visited 8 other European countries while I was over there. So I was able to see a lot of Europe, which was amazing. And then I chose Guatemala because I actually went 2 months before I went to France. So with them being so close, I wanted to do something starkly different. And I wanted really that huge dichotomy, especially within the same year, even pushing myself, like going to a country that speaks Spanish and what Spanish words can I pick up? I'm a big advocate for trying to learn little pieces of the language of the culture you're in. And so that's why I chose that. And then off of that advice, I would say absolutely go to your dream place that you're going to go. This is like nothing you will ever have the chance to experience again because we have these amazing faculty members leading you. So if your dream is to go to France, you could go by yourself, be there for a week, go to the main tourist spots in Paris and whatever. But if you did that trip with, SAE faculty members, you are learning the cultural traditions and you're learning the history behind each place you're going. And I think it creates even a greater depth of understanding. So I would say if you have some dream or if you are like, well, I'll eventually get there, I would say choose it for your cross-cultural because you are going to have a deeper experience going with these faculty members than you would going by yourself. And it's 3 weeks.
Yeah.
That's amazing. You'll get to see the whole country. That's crazy.
Yeah. Thank you, Hannah. Paul, I might turn to you and just open it up a little bit. The next question we were going to ask and are going to ask is about kind of long-lasting effects of the trip or how it has impacted a person in their academic life, but also just their life in general. And I'm wondering, Paul, would you share a little bit about your perspective? You have so much experience in guiding students through the process of learning a bit about a different culture. What have you seen? What would you like to say about cross-cultural studies and what students could anticipate with that?
Yeah, I'm reminded of, there's a Czech philosopher named Comenius that said there are 4 levels of education: elementary, secondary, post-secondary, and travel. Travel just forces you out. We're all acculturated beings, and it forces us out of our culture to see different ways of being, different ways of living. I usually tell students, you're going to learn about a different culture. You're going to learn more about your own culture as you see it through other people's eyes, and you're going to learn about yourself, the good, the bad, and the ugly. You're going to discover your limits. You're going to be pushed to your limits sometimes. But I've had so many students over the years say, this changed my life in terms of career path, in terms of just how they think about issues and things like that. And that's the objective, is to, there's no critical participation in the contemporary world without critical consciousness. And that comes through exposure to the rest of the world. Kind of like Steve was saying, when you're in Chicago and you get those big disparities in terms of economic inequality and things like that. The one other piece I'd say is one of the benefits for me personally. If I go to the Czech Republic by myself, I can see some great tourist spots. If I go with 15 students, I'm able to meet with an ambassador that I would not normally be able to meet with. We met with Tomáš Sedláček, who was 24 when Václav Havel tapped him as his economic advisor and said, help us figure out how to transition from communism to capitalism. no small task, and meet brilliant people around the globe. And because of the different trips I've done, just so many fantastic, amazing people I've been able to meet. And having done more than one, you begin to connect the dots too. You begin to see the patterns in what we used to call third world countries and the developed countries and the connections between the two. And it's certainly made me a better sociologist as I get out of the bubble, as Spring Arbor students sometimes call it. And a lot of our students come from relatively homogeneous rural towns and things like that. And I think it's just a critical part of who we've become as an institution.
Thanks, Paul. If you don't mind, do any examples come to mind or anecdotes of your time leading cross-cultural experiences where there's been a major insight or an experience that is humorous or anything that along those lines?
I'll loop back to a previous question about how you pick your trip for a minute. This is both humorous and sad. When our students first got to Guatemala, one of our guest speakers was asking, why did you choose to come to Guatemala, et cetera? And one of the students said, well, my goal in life is to get to all 7 continents, so I thought I'd start here in Guatemala. And we're all sitting there saying, okay, who's going to tell her? And we did tell her that she's still in North America.
Oh, no.
She was devastated.
Oh.
Devastated. I'm willing to settle for 6 of the 7 myself. Antarctica, not so much.
All right. Thank you.
Say that to say, research your trip before you choose. Talk to people, get some insights about what you're going to experience and so forth.
Fantastic, thanks. Let's go back over to Meredith. And, you know, when you think, Meredith, about your time, and you've had some maybe opportunity to reflect on its impact in your life, has it changed the way that you approach your studies or your life in general, or how you look at your own culture, or anything kind of lasting impact?
Yeah, for sure. So the educational system is very different between Guatemala and the US. And so a lot of people don't even go to like what would be the equivalent of our high school, and especially not to college. And so I think it just, those nights where I'm up late studying for a big exam or whatever, it makes me like sit back and think and process, be like, this is an opportunity that I have. This is not something that I have to do. It's something that I get to do. And just really making me more aware and more appreciative of like the opportunity that I have to go to school and get a degree. Another thing is like through my medical internship, and then I took medical sociology with Paul, of just like really opening my eyes to different medical systems, but then also to our own medical systems and seeing our shortcomings. And it's made me really passionate now about how can I change that? How can I make medical care better in the US? Because I do want to go to medical school after graduating from Spring Arbor. Of how can I bring what I've learned from there back to the US, back to better serve patients in the future. And especially underserved populations like the Spanish-speaking communities in our own towns and communities here. So,
thank you. Thanks, Meredith. Nathan and then Andrew, what's sticking with you over the years, or how has your experience affected your life, your thoughts, and so forth?
Yeah. So I've had pretty much a whole year to reflect on my experience so far, and you know, as far as education goes, you know, it's pretty similar to here, but something that's really stuck with me is the differences between consumption and the differences between, I guess, what we deem as necessary. I was actually talking to one of my American friends who still lives in Japan the other day, and he just moved into a new apartment, and it's 40 square feet. And that's about the average size of a apartment that costs about $1,000 a month. And so, you know, you bike around or you'll take the trains and you'll see people just stacked on top of each other in very, very small apartments. And you wonder to yourself, how do people live like this? A lot of people don't have beds. They have futons that they'll fold up and put in their closets when they're done sleeping. And you would think, how could I live without a bed? But being able to spend time living in a very cramped and very small space with a lot of people made me more considerate of those around me, but it also, made me realize how much of my life here in America is, excessive, how much I don't need. Do I really need, the larger apartment? Do I really need the nicer car? Everyone is very equal. Everyone has a lot of the same things, and so a lot of the hierarchy is kind of diminished in Japan, and that really taught me, do I need some of the nice things now? Not really. It's a lot of it is excessive.
So in a way, I mean, it's shows you there are other ways of living, and I know it's a well-worn kind of analogy, but it's like if you want to know something about water, don't ask a fish, because a fish, all it knows is water and can't really describe it. I know for me, I didn't know much about my culture until I left and experienced a different culture. And I think that's part of the long-term benefit is the new eyes that it gives us to look at our own culture, which we wouldn't have otherwise. After leading a trip to, say, Uganda or wherever, I'm not terribly concerned that students remember the form of government or the president of these other countries, but I would hope that it has given them the opportunity to look at their own home culture differently and appreciatively for sure, but also critically where appropriate. Andrew, what do you think? What's stuck with you? How has it changed your experience?
Very much like Nathan, I'm almost a year since my trip, and I think truly I'm still processing everything that I experienced and being constantly reminded of those experiences. First, just like the friendships and the memories that I took from that trip are something that are going to stick with me for a lifetime. I see Alyssa Pluta's on here. I got to know Alyssa really well while we were in Jamaica together, and we had such a blast. And we still talk about the stories and the laughs and the memories from that, and it's just so fun. One of the things that I noticed when I was in Jamaica was, and this is kind of similar to Nathan's point, but like stuff is not as much of an issue there. And truly the joy that the people have does not come from stuff, does not come from the things. It comes from people and the community that they are in and that they are around. And so it really opened my eyes even more to, what is important? Is it the people around us? Is it the relationships, or is it the things that we have? And that was just a great example of that. One of the other things that I really took away was we had the opportunity to visit a deaf village. So it's an entire community of those who are deaf or partially deaf. And it was just a completely eye-opening experience, but it showed me that, deafness, or you can relate this to another disability, blindness or anything like that, it's not a disability for them. It's another way of living. These people don't see it as a disability, as a disadvantage. To them, it's life, and they can do, especially when given the opportunity, just as much as anyone else can, if not more. And that was just astounding and heart-changing. And I know we got so much out of that. So in relation to my major, very similar to Meredith, just getting to see the healthcare system and going in there, and Jamaica has free healthcare for its citizens, and the pros and the cons of that, and seeing, asking myself, like, why would that work in the US? Why would it not work in the US? What are the pros and cons of our system here? And just getting to think deeply about that and the comparisons. It was a really cool experience.
Thank you, Andrew. I think I might jump over to Hannah real quick, and then we'll come to Steve. But Hannah, when you think about how you've been changed through the process of cross-cultural studies, I mean, what comes to mind?
Everything. My whole life is different from travel, and from not even just travel, but also engaging in cultural conversations in the States, and engaging in conversations with people of different diversities, whether that be ethnic diversities, language diversities, socioeconomic diversity. Specifically, I would say the largest change definitely echoes what everyone else is saying, but when I lived in France, I lived with a host family that was originally from Rwanda, and they had lived in France for about 20 years. So I was actually able to experience some really cool impacts from Rwandan culture as well, without ever actually having been to Rwanda. And the biggest thing was, there's a saying in French that translates to, it's not serious. And that is very much how they live their life. The bad stuff, if it's not that bad, it's not serious. And I think in America, we are terrible at that. Every little thing impacts us. Every little thing causes us to stress. And in France, what has meaning has more meaning. So for example, you don't smile at people in the street, but when you greet someone, you kiss them on the cheek, like you greet them. And so it's just very much a quality over quantity thing. When you eat good food, but you don't eat as often as we eat. And so really trying to bring some of those things back home and back into my life has been beautiful. And, you know, learning from my host parents, like they lived through a genocide and they have this incredible faith. And they have this incredible true joy of giving and hospitality, and like what doesn't matter in their life just doesn't matter. Like if their family's safe, if they have a roof over their head and food on their table, they are good. And so trying to bring that back with me as much as I can has truly impacted the entire way I live my life. And that trickles down into all sorts of different parts of life. So
fantastic. Thank you, Hannah. It's like, you know, what does it mean to live well? And how, you think about France and good food and some of the things in life that we can take for granted. I would imagine the other faculty that have led cross-cultural, it's fun to see how transformation happens even just in the 3 weeks of trip. Gaining confidence. Had a student who in Egypt was real shy, and we were kind of concerned about him. We were at the pyramids and there are lots of folks selling stuff and kind of taking advantage of tourists. And we turn around and there he is on top of a camel, all dressed up in Egyptian garb. And the camel owner is insisting that he pays $40 in order to come off of the camel. And this student, who was so reserved and shy by the end of the 3 weeks, got thrown out of a shop for bargaining too hard, for haggling too hard. Now, I'm not recommending, you know, being obnoxious, but it just showed you do gain confidence over time in learning you can navigate an unknown kind of challenging environment. And I wonder, let's see, Steve, oh, yes, please.
May I interject? And sure. Students won't know who I am. So
yes.
I've been around Spring Arbor for a while. I was chief academic officer for a while. I do strategic planning, so I don't get to meet you all. But we talk a lot about being a liberal arts institution. And if you go back in history, you discover that the idea of the liberal arts was the liberating arts. And that prepared you to be a fully functional member of society, to be independent, to have confidence in a whole variety of circumstances, and to know that if you need to learn something new, you can learn something new.
Yes.
And that if things are different, you can cope with things being different. And that's another reason this cross-cultural experience is so very important. I think what the students have already said reflects that not only are you exposed to something new, but as Paul said, you are also exposed to something new in yourself, and are then able to apply the education that you've had in new venues and not to shy away from a new experience. And that's one of the most important things you can bring out of a genuine liberal education. So that's my 2 cents.
Thank you so much, Dr. Rupert. Yeah, that's well said. And it's true, if we've never been in a kind of challenging situation where we don't really know the rules or the customs, we won't have the opportunity to grow. And I'd like to turn over to Steve. Steve, the next question that we were going to discuss has to do with kind of, well, I don't know, I might ask if you would comment a little bit about, from an employer standpoint, what you look for in employees and how students might anticipate benefits from their cross-cultural experiences going on into the workforce.
Absolutely. First off, we'll echo everything Dr. Rupert said. It very much sums up the reasons why this can be extremely valuable in your college experience. I will say many institutions encourage and have thriving study abroad experiences for their students. So the challenge that I will make to all of the folks signed in on here, your personal formation is important, but where you will successfully make this connection is by being able to process and quantify and make those connections that, like Dr. Rupert talked about, and what you just said there, Tom, like being able to be thrown into a situation and then have to cope with it and adapt to it, that you have engaged with hard situations, and that you have gained the ability to think critically. And because so much of what you're doing in these 4 years, or you're shorter or longer depending on your situation, is very easy to take for granted and to see those challenges. But I think Meredith talked about it being an opportunity, and it's hard to see that when you're in it, but that when that tassel moves, you know, you have world-class educators here begging you to share what they know, begging you, please come to class, please read this material, please engage with these ideas and struggle. It is hard, it's supposed to be hard. But the moment that changed, they move on to the next class and they move on to their next group. And when you go out into the world, you realize that that's just step one of what you need to do. And your first year, 18 months, depending on where you go, is going to be learning again. All of, okay, yes, you know in theory how things should work, and you know what the textbook said it should be, but here at my company, or here at this company, or here in these situations, here's how we do it. Here's how we interpret that. Here's what our industry requires. And you start, again, right down at the bottom, and you have to learn and grow. So the difference is when you talk about a cross-cultural experience versus a study abroad. It's the preparation that goes into it ahead of time. You know, very few places where you take a class with your cohort and learn about the culture, and then have those experiences, the extremes that we talked about earlier, Paul mentioned, and you did, Tom, the extremes and why we do it. It's not just what did I experience and what do I think about it, but how then did it shape me? How does it shape my perspective? How does it shape the way I approach problems? How does it shape the way I interpret information? How does it shape the dynamics of the relationships that I form and how I handle conflict? So being able to share experiences like that make you highly desirable, because most of the things that you'll see on a job ad, for instance, when they list all the things that they want, yes, there will be some specifics depending on your major. I mean, there could be quite a few of certifications and types of degrees, but most of them will start with things like problem solving, or ability to relate to others, and communication skills and critical thinking. It's much more subjective, because from the interviewer's perspective, I may have an idea of what that means, and you may have other examples. And so being able to learn how to learn, and learn how to adapt, and learn how to react, and learn how you train, and how you're going to grow, and how you're going to engage those are all elements that are going to be very advantageous, especially coming out of the liberal arts. And it's interesting to see some of the larger institutions, you know, the public institutions, talking about these types of things. I work with some other large schools, and they're kind of circling back on this idea of a broad experience and deep knowledge, and they call it the T-shape. And I won't name who they are, but they were all excited about it. They invented this really cool thing where they were, oh, we're going to give them a lot of different kinds of experiences that could really help them dive deep. It's the T, it's the T. Like, it's liberal arts. That's what you're talking about. And so it turns out there's been schools doing this. It's a thing, you know. So for us, we recruit at over 400 institutions around the United States, and most of them are liberal arts institutions for this exact reason. It's the idea that you're learning how to learn and learning how to engage, and being able to connect your experience with engaging a culture, and connect that to engaging the culture of your employer. So wherever you're going to go on to a medical profession, you're going to go on to study the sciences, however it is, you're going to work for somebody. There's going to be a culture there. There's going to be a little environment there. There are going to be relationships there and conflict there. It's its own culture. And so learning not only what can I bring and how can I gain, yes, I'm going to get money, but how do I gain from your culture? How do I engage with your culture? How do I continue that culture? How do I make sure that that culture is made better a little bit because of my contribution? That approach is going to separate you very much so in an interview, and then it's going to help you rise to the top when you're talking about performance reviews and engaging with your management, because when you actually see core values or a mission statement as something to engage with and wrestle with, and a lens through which you view all of your tasks, all of your assignments are viewed through that lens, like we talk about in terms of the concept of Spring Arbor. When you can choose a lens to see all the work that you do, and it's not just another email, another thing, but it's a reason for why we do what we do, that it makes you an incredible asset to any company. So long-winded, kind of multifaceted answer, but
yeah, Steve, that was amazing. Great wisdom. If you're a student watching this, rewind it and listen to that again. But thank you, Steve. That's tremendously helpful. Turn it over to Mark for the next question.
I'm seeing time's against us, so
yeah, open it up for questions or whatever you want.
Yeah, if people have questions for any of our speakers, let's do that, because I know that we wanted to end with a word from Diane on some practical matters. So I do have a question that I can ask, but if there are questions that other people have for any of our speakers, now is your time to speak. And don't be shy. It can be a practical question, or
you could
more
put
general.
it in the chat if you want.
Well, feel free to jump in with a question. The final, and we'll give everyone maybe 30 seconds, all of our students and speakers. If you could give somebody listening who's getting ready for a trip a piece of advice, what would that one piece of advice be?
I can start really quick. We as Americans are at the bottom of the totem pole when it comes to language. It is very uncommon for Americans to speak more than one language. And in every other country, it is very common to speak 3. And usually one of those is English. And instead of looking at that as I am superior because I speak English, please look at that as I am so humbled that I get to communicate with someone else because they speak my language. And so learn 5 phrases and say them terribly and say them wrong, but learn them and try, because I promise they will appreciate that more than you know. Because you have this incredible opportunity to travel almost anywhere in the world and still be able to talk to people. And that is a huge blessing. So take that and take that humbly.
So maybe we're giving students the opportunity to practice some humility here, which I think a good word.
I did not go on a trip, but I've spent much of my career traveling worldwide. My most important suggestion is be present. Take advantage of the opportunity. Don't stand back and instantly judge everything or say, I'm not going to do that. But take advantage of, particularly in these circumstances, experiences that have been designed and are safe, challenging, but safe. So if you go on a trip, be there. Don't be thinking what's going on back at Spring Arbor.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you.
The thing I would add that goes with the humility, I think, is the spirit of openness. Probably the worst student, who shall remain nameless, on all my cross-cultural trips, came in convinced he already knew everything he needed to know, and just argued with every speaker we had, and there just wasn't a sense of humility. And that's Thoreau talks about this in Walden, that we have to remember our ignorance to expand our knowledge. And so having a sense of humility, I don't have all the answers, and instead of pushing back, inquire and ask and have an openness to learning.
I love the fact that in every culture, there is a recognized role of learner or student. And
Yeah.
that's where we can slot right in. Yeah.
I would say like try to say yes to as many things as possible. Like even if it's just little random opportunities, little spontaneous like trips of like our host mom always was like, hey, do you want to go to my my hometown and visit with my family? And it was like a 15-minute bus ride or so, depending on how busy and how many stops you had to make. But and just like some of those are the best like memories that we had, or when other people in the trip would be like, hey, do you want to go to a cafe and get coffee, do homework or whatever? But like take those opportunities while you have them, because you don't want to get back to the US and be like, man, I wish I would have done this more. I wish I would have done that. Take that opportunity when you have it, and you will appreciate it, and you'll grow even just from the little things that seem possibly insignificant at the time.
I'll just add a footnote to that. The guys who are selling drugs in Parkinson trial, say no to those.
Okay, say no to those ones, yes. Or if you get invited to somewhere to go somewhere, say no to those ones. But everything else from the people you trust, say yes.
Absolutely.
I would say when you're doing, especially a semester abroad, when you have more freedom, it is what you make it. You know, you could go to all the classes and you could do the required field trips, but I'd say the greatest parts of my experience came from me doing things on my own with some other students. And on top of that, don't say yes to drugs and you know, possible favors by individuals on the streets in the city that you may pass. But, you know, there's going to be things in every culture that are going to be exclusive or very special to it. I would take, for example, the fact that Japan is a bathing culture, and public baths are very popular. Yes, they're split up by genders, but it was something that I was very uncomfortable with. And I was invited to go out one night and just, you know, go to the public bath and then go get a bite to eat afterwards. And that turned out to be one of my favorite things to do with some of my friends. So there's things that you're very cautious of that you would never do, and it's not part of your culture, but give it a shot, and you know, do all of the good, safe experiences that you can. It might turn out to be, you know, one of your favorite parts of the trip.
As far as I know, there is not a public bath in Spring Arbor Township. So
There's not. I'm glad for that as well.
Lime Lake.
Yeah.
I would, for my piece of advice, I think my dear friend Aaron Couch had said this before, but be comfortable with the uncomfortable, realizing that there are going to be moments guaranteed, where you are uncomfortable and in a situation, but recognizing the fact that everybody is going to feel that way at some point. It's not just you, and really embracing those, but also kind of adding to what Meredith said, let yourself be fully in. Just go for it. This is a once in a lifetime opportunity that you're not going to get with the same people or in the same places ever again. So just jump in, dive in, and don't be afraid to take that leap.
Thank you, Andrew. I'd like to turn it over to Diane to talk about some of the practical information you need to know about cross-cultural studies.
I want to thank everyone on the panel. You've all said such significant things about the cross-cultural program and your experiences. And those are goals and that we have for all students that experience cross-cultural. And we just appreciate all the professors who lead these programs and do it so well and offer the opportunities. And I love my job sending students abroad, and I'm happy to help you if you haven't gone yet, or if you want to go a second time, go as well. We have some wonderful opportunities planned for 2022, the year 2022. And this year with COVID, things are a little bit different. First of all, the cross-cultural office has moved to lower level Dietzman, and we're still unpacking our boxes there and getting set up. So right now, Wendy and I are happy to engage with you by Zoom or by phone, but we don't have access to all of our things yet in the lower level Dietzman. However, by November, we hope that that will all be settled sometime in November. We're also publishing the magazine for the 2022 destinations, which will arrive in your mailbox if you haven't fulfilled your cross-cultural sometime before you leave for Thanksgiving vacation. And then this year we're going to digital forms. And so you will be receiving in your email a link to the digital forms or attachments of the digital forms. And then you can submit those in January. If you're planning to go in 2022, you can submit those to the cross-cultural office at the ccs@arbor.edu email. And then we'll work with you at that point to obtain an appointment for reviewing all of your application materials and making sure that you have everything that you need to submit to get into the program. We're happy to help you if you have any questions, and we look forward to working with you and all the wonderful opportunities that you have ahead of you. If you have any questions, you can email me at dkurtz@arbor.edu, and I'm happy to engage with you with any opportunities that you want to explore for semester abroad or for our 3-week program, which goes in January or in May of 2022.
Thank you so much, Diane. And we do have the finest folks anywhere organizing these, supporting these trips, walking with you. Are there any last questions before we close? Well, I want to thank you. Thank you to the panelists, the students, alums, staff. Thank you. I did a shout out to Dr. Jerry Walden on CPLA. Thank you for joining us and the other faculty. So students, I hope this has been helpful for you. Really are excited to either hear about your trip to come or the trip that you've already taken. But you really can expect it's going to be a springboard to your future, and look forward to walking with you through that. So thanks so much. Thank you, Dr. Edwards and all, and take care. Bye-bye.